Look at this photograph. At first glance, it seems like nothing more than a formal portrait from the 1860s. Three young women in elegant silk dresses. Their posture perfect, their expressions calm, the kind of image you might pass in a museum without a second thought. But something about this photograph caught the attention of a historian. Something hidden in the way the sisters held their hands. Something that had gone unnoticed for over 150 years. What she discovered would rewrite everything we thought we knew about resistance, survival, and the silent war fought in plain sight. These three women were not simply posing for a portrait. They were sending a message their captors never understood. The rain hammers against the windows of Harrison's auction house in Richmond, Virginia, as Dr. Amelia Grant examines a collection of Civil War era photographs scheduled for sale. At 43, she spends 2 decades studying American history at Howard University. Yet nothing prepares her for what she finds. The collection belongs to the estate of a deceased antiques dealer who spends 50 years accumulating photographs from the antebellum South. Most are unremarkable, stiff portraits of wealthy families, images of plantation houses, formal gatherings frozen in silver and glass. Then Amelia's fingers stop on one photograph. 3 young black women sit in an ornate parlor dressed in silk gowns, expensive even by the standards of wealthy white families. Their hair is elegantly styled, their posture impeccable, but it is their hands that catch Amelia's breath. Each sister holds her hands in a distinct position on her lap. The eldest places her right hand over her left, fingers slightly spread. The middle sister clasps her hands, her thumbs crossed in an unusual pattern. The youngest rests one hand flat, while the other forms a subtle shape against the dark fabric of her skirt. Amelia has seen hand positions in Victorian photographs before. They are common, often dictated by photographers seeking aesthetic balance. But these positions feel deliberate, coded, intentional. She turns the photograph over. On the back, faded handwriting reads, "The Kingsley Sisters, Charleston, 1863. Find something interesting?" Asks Marcus Webb, the auction house director. "These women," Amelia says, not taking her eyes off the photograph. "Do you know anything about them?" Marcus shrugs. The previous owner leaves no documentation. They are assumed to be free women of color, perhaps from a wealthy family. The dresses alone suggest significant means. Amelia studies the image again. Something is not right. In 1863, Charleston stands deep in Confederate territory. The idea of 3 black women sitting for such an elaborate portrait, dressed in such finery during the height of the Civil War, seems almost impossible. "I would like to purchase this photograph," she says quietly. The entire collection is being sold as one lot. Amelia looks up. "Then I will take the entire collection." Back in her office at Howard University, she pins the photograph to her research board and begins her investigation. The first question is simple. Who are the Kingsley sisters? She searches census records from Charleston in the 1860s. Free black families are rare in South Carolina, till those with significant wealth even rarer. After days of searching, she finds nothing. No Kingsley family appears in any record she locates. She expands her search to church records, property transactions, and tax documents. Nothing. It is as if they do not exist, she says to her graduate assistant, David, who becomes equally absorbed in the mystery. "Maybe Kingsley is not their real name," David suggests. "If they are hiding something, they might use an alias." Amelia considers this. It makes sense. But why would 3 black women hide their identity in a photograph? And who takes the picture? She examines the photograph under magnification, searching for identifying marks. Victorian photographers often stamp their work, leaving signatures or studio names embossed on the cardstock. Then she finds it. In the lower right corner, nearly invisible, is a tiny embossed seal. J.R. Whitmore. Charleston. Research reveals that Jonathan Whitmore operates a photography studio in Charleston from 1858 to 1867. He is white, from a prominent family, and documents much of Charleston's elite society during the war years. Why would a white photographer from a Confederate family take such an elaborate portrait of 3 black women? Digging deeper into Whitmore's history, Amelia uncovers something unexpected. After the war, Whitmore moves north to Boston. He becomes involved with abolitionist causes and donates significant sums to freedmen schools. He changes sides, Amelia says softly. Or perhaps he is never on the side we assume. She books a flight to Charleston. The answers are not in databases or digital archives. They are in the city where the photograph is taken, buried in the history Charleston prefers to forget. The air in Charleston feels thick with humidity and magnolia as Amelia checks into a small hotel near the historic district. She heads to the Charleston County Public Library's South Carolina room. The archivist, an elderly woman named Dorothy, listens carefully as Amelia explains her research. Jonathan Whitmore, Dorothy repeats, her eyes narrowing. That is a name I have not heard in years. My grandmother speaks of him. Amelia leans forward. Your grandmother knows him. Knew of him, Dorothy replies. She is a child during Reconstruction, but she remembered the stories. Whitmore was not just a photographer. According to family legend, he was something far more dangerous to the Confederacy. Dorothy leads Amelia to a restricted section of the archive where fragile documents rest in climate-controlled cases. She retrieves a small leather journal, its pages yellowed with age. This was donated anonymously in 1952. Dorothy explains, we did not know who it belonged to until a researcher identified the handwriting as Whitmore's. Amelia opens the journal carefully. The entries are cryptic, filled with references to packages delivered and routes confirmed. Then she finds an entry dated March 1863. The 3 sisters sit for their portrait today. The message is embedded. If our friends in the North understand the code, the next passage proceeds as planned. God protect them all. Amelia's hands tremble. He uses photographs to send coded messages. Dorothy nods slowly. The Underground Railroad does not end when the war begins. It transforms. Whitmore is part of it. Amelia photographs the journal entry and continues reading. The sisters are not named Kingsley at all. Their real names are Clara, Ruth, and Viola. They escaped from a plantation in Georgia 3 years earlier and live under assumed identities in Charleston, working as seamstresses for a sympathetic white family. But they are not just survivors. They are conductors. Amelia spends the next week tracing every reference to Clara, Ruth, and Viola in Whitmore's journal. The photographer is meticulous, recording not only his subjects, but also the system they develop together. The hand positions in the photographs are not random. They are a language. According to Whitmore's notes, the sisters create a visual code based on hand placements, finger positions, and the arrangement of objects in the frame. Each combination conveys specific information: safe houses, dangerous routes, times of passage, names of allies and enemies. The photographs move through a network of abolitionists disguised as art collectors, traveling merchants, and even Confederate sympathizers who secretly switch allegiances. The images pass through checkpoints without suspicion because they appear to be ordinary portraits. It hides in plain sight. Amelia explains to David over a video call. The Confederates see what they expect to see: black women in fine clothing, perhaps servants, dressed for a vanity portrait. They never imagined these women send intelligence right beneath their notice. David is silent for a moment. How many photographs are there? Whitmore's journal mentions at least 40 portraits taken between 1862 and 1865. Most feature the sisters, but some include other members of the network. Each photograph carries different information, and the one you find at the auction. Amelia looks at the photograph pinned to her board. According to Whitmore's March 1863 entry, this image confirms that the Combahee River route is safe for passage. Months later, Harriet Tubman leads the Combahee River Raid, freeing more than 750 enslaved people. The implication settles heavily between them. Are you saying the sisters helped plan the raid? David asks. I am saying their photograph may be part of the intelligence that makes it possible. Amelia's research leads her to the descendants of the white family who sheltered the sisters in Charleston. Their records are preserved by a great-great-granddaughter named Helen, lives in a restored antebellum home on the outskirts of the city. Helen, in her 70s, is sharp-eyed and cautious. She spends years protecting her family's complicated history and hesitates to share it. My ancestors are Confederate, she says, pouring tea in her formal parlor. At least, that is what their neighbors believe. The truth is more complicated. Her great-great-grandmother, Elizabeth, runs a seamstress business employing free black women. On the surface, it appears respectable. In reality, serves as cover for one of the most sophisticated intelligence operations of the Civil War. Elizabeth's husband is a Confederate officer, Helen explains. He has access to troop movements, supply routes, military plans. He passes that information to Elizabeth. She encodes it in dress patterns and fabric designs. The seamstresses incorporate those patterns into the clothing they make and the photographs. Amelia asks. Helen nods. The dresses in Whitmore's portraits are not merely beautiful. They are messages. The lace pattern on a collar, the number of buttons on a sleeve, the arrangement of ribbons, everything carries meaning. Amelia's thoughts race. The sisters are not simply posing with coded hand positions. Their entire outfits form part of the message. How is the information decoded? Helen rises and retrieves a small, worn booklet from an old secretary desk. This is my great-great-grandmother's cipher guide. It explains how to read the patterns. Inside are detailed drawings of dress elements paired with meanings. A rose pattern signals safe passage. Vertical stripes warn of danger. A particular lace arrangement communicates the number of people waiting for transport. The sisters do not merely send messages. They transmit entire escape plans, armed with the cipher guide. Amelia returns to the photograph of the three sisters and begins decoding every element. The process takes days of careful analysis, cross-referencing Whitmore's journal with Elizabeth's cipher. Amelia cross-references the cipher guide with historical records of the period. The message hidden in the March 1863 photograph proves far more detailed than she first imagines. Clara's hand position indicates a date ranged the first week of June. Ruth's clasped hands, thumbs crossed, specify a location, the Combahee River ferry crossing. Viola's flat palm and curved fingers communicate a number approximately 700. The dress patterns add further layers. The lace on Clara's collar signals that Union gunboats will provide cover. The buttons on Ruth's sleeves confirm that local guides are secured. The ribbon arrangement on Viola's bodice names the operations leader, a woman known by the code Moses, Harriet Tubman. Amelia leans back in her chair, overwhelmed. The Combahee River Raid stands as one of the most successful military operations led by a woman in American history. Tubman guides Union forces up the river, liberating more than 750 enslaved people in a single night. Historians long wonder how she obtains such precise intelligence about Confederate positions, mine placements, and plantation quarters. Now, Amelia has her answer. The intelligence is gathered by a network of black women working in plain sight, coded in photographs and dress patterns, transmitted through a system so elegant the Confederacy never suspects it exists. They are spies, Amelia whispers. The most effective spies of the Civil War in history forgets them completely. She thinks of monuments to Confederate generals, textbooks celebrating military strategists, museums preserving weapons and uniforms. Yet these three women, whose courage and intelligence helped free hundreds, vanish from memory. The question that haunts her is what happens to Clara, Ruth, and Viola after the war. Whitmore's journal ends in 1865. Elizabeth's records mention nothing after Richmond Falls. Amelia turns to Freedmen's Bureau records documenting the lives of formerly enslaved people during Reconstruction. The archives are incomplete and damaged, scattered across repositories. After weeks of searching, she finds a registration document from Savannah, Georgia, dated November 1865. It lists 3 sisters applying for marriage licenses on the same day: Clara, Ruth, and Viola. The record notes they are formerly of Charleston and work as teachers. She traces them to a missionaries in Savannah. The school's records, preserved in a university archive in Atlanta, contain staff lists and annual reports. Clara teaches reading and writing to adults once forbidden to learn. Ruth teaches mathematics and accounting, preparing students for independence. Viola teaches music and, according to one report, Qua possesses an extraordinary gift for codes and cipher skills she uses to teach children to read. The sisters continued their work, transforming from spies into educators, using the same talents that free hundreds to lift thousands out of illiteracy. Amelia discovers a letter Clara writes to a Northern benefactor in 1867. "We are never named in the histories of the war. We are not generals or politicians. We are seamstresses and subjects of photographs. But we know that freedom requires more than battles. It requires intelligence, patience, and the courage to hide in plain sight. We do not seek recognition. We seek only to ensure that those who come after us will never be invisible again." Amelia reads the letter repeatedly. The sisters know they will be forgotten. They accept it and continue their work anyway. Her research eventually leads to living descendants through genealogical records, DNA databases, and countless calls. He traces family lines stretching from Savannah to Chicago, Detroit, Los Angeles, and Atlanta. In Chicago, she speaks with Michael, retired postal worker whose great-great-grandmother is Ruth. He knows only that his ancestors are teachers and survivors of slavery. The details are lost. In Detroit, she meets Patricia, a school principal descended from Clara. When shown the photograph, Patricia weeps. "She looks like my daughter," she says softly. "The same eyes. I never know what she looks like before." In Atlanta, Amelia meets James, a musician descended from Viola. He inherits his ancestors' love of music without knowing its origin. "She teaches music," he asks. "She teaches codes through music," Amelia explains. "Songs carry hidden messages. Rhythms encode information. She turns resistance into art." James sits quietly, then lifts his guitar and plays a melody passed down through generations, taught by his grandmother without explanation. "I always wonder where this song comes from," he says. "Now I know." The descendants gather at Amelia's invitation in Charleston, near the site where Whitmore's studio once stands. They form a circle, each holding a copy of the photograph. Connected by a history nearly erased, Amelia publishes her findings in a historical journal, including high-resolution images of the photograph, Whitmore's journal entries, and Elizabeth's cipher guide. The academic response is immediate and enthusiastic. Historians describe the discovery as one of the most significant revelations about Civil War resistance in decades. But Amelia wants more than academic recognition. She approaches the Smithsonian, National Museum of African American History and Culture with a proposal: acquire the photograph and create an exhibit dedicated to the hidden intelligence networks of the Civil War. The museum agrees. The exhibit, Hidden in Plain Sight: The Secret War of the Seamstress Spies, opens 18 months later. It features the original photograph of Clara, Ruth, and Viola, along with Whitmore's journal, Elizabeth's cipher guide, and related artifacts uncovered after Amelia's discovery. At the center stands an interactive display where visitors decode photographs using the sister system, experiencing the ingenuity required to resist oppression in an era when literacy itself is forbidden. On opening night, the descendants stand together before the exhibit. Michael, Patricia, James, and many other family members from across the country. Patricia speaks, for over 150 years, our grandmothers are invisible. History records generals and politicians, battles and treaties, but it forgets the women who sew messages into dresses, who pose for photographs that carry secrets, who risk everything to help others find freedom. Tonight, they are invisible, no more. The photograph of Clara, Ruth, and Viola hangs in a place of honor, illuminated softly to reveal every detail: the elegant dresses, composed expressions, carefully positioned hands, hands that speak a language of defiance, hands that help change history. A year after the exhibit opens, Amelia returns to Charleston. She walks through the historic district, past elegant homes, tourist carriages, monuments, and markers that tell only one version of the city's past. She stops at the corner where Whitmore's studio once stands. The building is gone, replaced by a boutique hotel. At her request, a small plaque marks the site. On this site stood the photography studio of Jonathan Whitmore, where images of resistance were created during the Civil War. The subjects of his most important work, Clara, Ruth, and Viola, used coded hand positions and dress patterns to transmit intelligence that helped free hundreds of enslaved people. Their courage remained hidden for over 150 years. Amelia touches the plaque gently, then walks to the waterfront, where the Combahee River flows toward the sea. She thinks of the photographs from that era sitting in archives and attics, dismissed as ordinary portraits. How many contain messages still undecoded? How many stories wait quietly to be discovered? She thinks of the sisters who know they will be forgotten and resist anyway, who understand that some acts of courage are not performed for recognition, but for the stubborn belief that freedom matters, even when no one is watching. And she thinks of the photograph itself, that small rectangle of silver and glass surviving war, neglect, and the deliberate erasure of Black history. It waits patiently for someone to look closely enough to see what it truly is. Not just a portrait, but a declaration, a testament to ordinary people who refuse silence, who find ways to speak when speaking is forbidden, who hide their resistance in plain sight until the world is finally ready to see it. Amelia takes out her phone and photographs the plaque, the river, the sky. She sends the image to the descendants with a simple message: they are remembered. They will not be forgotten.